Hey you guys, this is going to be a shorter video because it's Sunday and we streamed some services today, so I don't want to overwhelm you. But I did want to introduce our new topic for the week, which is the cult of Mormonism, or the Church of Latter-day Saints, as it's also called. I hate to move away from Catholicism so quickly because there was a lot more to say, but you need to be researching this stuff yourself, or I can give you some more of the resources if you want, but it's important that we know about all these different religions, but we need to move on. So I'm actually going to read a short snippet from a paper I wrote a couple years ago for a seminary class about cults. And the first sentence is, to truly understand any major belief system, one must look at its source. And I want to say something about that before I continue. A lot of people claim Christianity is only 2,000 years old because Christ was born 2,000 years ago, which makes sense. Whereas Judaism, the system the Jews use with sacrifices and all that, is 6,000 to 7,000 years old, because that's when everything was introduced to Abraham or Moses. And the problem with that is people don't see those two as connected, the Old Testament and the New Testament. They don't see Christ as the fulfillment of the Old Testament law, the Messiah that everyone was looking for. But does it really matter how old a religion is? Is that really what gives it its authenticity? In part, yes, because our religion was founded by the creator of the universe. So he has all the authority of truth and history and ultimate power behind him and his message. But is that really what it is? Are we competing with other religions that are as old as creation? Satanism, for instance, we talked about 2 weeks ago. Satan's not as old as God, since God is timeless, but he is as old as the other angels, and certainly newer than humans. Does that make Satanism okay? Obviously not. So age doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the source material from where we get our truth. Scripture claims to be the words of the God of truth, which is why it's reliable. And I say all that is because the first page of this paper, this first part, has to do with the founder of Mormonism, which is only about 200 years old. Actually, it's exactly 200 years old. Which is recent religious-wise, but that shouldn't have anything to do with it. You'll come to see the source material for his religion or his cult is completely false. Actually, it's probably demonic. But I'll go ahead and read that just so I pique your interest, and we'll follow up with it tomorrow. The paper continues and says, in 1820, the founder of Mormonism lived in western New York. Joseph Smith Jr. was the son of Joseph Smith, a man of many varying occupations and religious convictions. Smith's grandfather, Mac, claimed to have had heavenly visions. Smith's father also claimed to hear from the celestial realm 7 times in 8 different years. To say that supposed theophanies or God revelations were in the family tradition would be a serious understatement. In the spring of 1820, the family's specialty, or their visions, seemed to perpetuate in the form of a spiritual message given to the youngest Smith. That would be Joseph Smith Jr. According to Smith, who doesn't seem to have recorded his vision until at least 11 years after the fact, or 1831, he experienced an encounter with several, or maybe just one, beings claiming to be Jesus, or Jesus and God. This same year, Smith managed to acquire something then called a seer stone, which he used to quit his job of mining and become a rather questionably successful treasure hunter. In the year 1823, 3 years later, Smith claimed to be visited again. This time it was by an angel of light named Moroni. Now I'm going to take a second and actually show you a symbol. This is the symbol I chose for this week's religion. That would be the angel of Moroni blowing a trumpet. That is a very common symbol you'll see around a Church of Latter-day Saints because it calls back to the angel that their founder supposedly heard from. We're picking a symbol for every religion, and that one would be this week's. This being, Moroni, told Smith of the location of a book that was purported to contain the history of early Americans. Along with the book was a device made up of several implements, seer stones being among them, created to translate said book. Not permitted to touch the book, Smith had to wait several years and endure several more visits from Moroni before he said he was finally given them in 1827, 7 years after the first vision. He and a Pennsylvania farmer, Martin Harris, got a copy of some translated book pages to a professor in New York. Though Professor Anthon verified the pages were Egyptian, he refused to authenticate a work that he was not allowed to see, since he didn't see the original. "I cannot read a sealed book," he said. Once Harris failed him, Smith took up with a young teacher named Cowdery. After Smith and Cowdery translated more of the book plates, a messenger decided to appear to both men to convey the priesthood of Aaron. With this new information, they baptized each other. In mid-1829, the book was ready for copywriting, which Smith claimed to be the author and proprietor of. So there is the first page of the paper, and that gives you an idea of the founder of it. He was a miner in New York, as were his ancestors, and that totally changed when he supposedly had this vision from the angel of light in 1820. And we're going to look at more about how he found the books or plates and how he was able to read them with the magic stones. And if this all sounds very magical, it's because it is. He was someone who and his grandfather was very religious, so he probably knew the Bible, and you'll see in a while that he ties in a lot of biblical themes into this, along with some extremely confusing mystical things, which is one of the other reasons it's a cult. Remember, way back last week, we talked about the Scripture being the only source of revelation to Christians that we trust, because it was written by the Spirit and canonized by the Spirit. All right, I hope that piqued your interest a little bit, whet your appetite, and that you're having a blessed Lord's Day. Remember to take it easy today if you've been straining yourself other days of the week, so that you can contemplate on His goodness to us. Miss you guys.